Ah, there it goes. Okay. This camera's starting to crap out on me, so I'll have to get a new one soon. Sorry about that. Roll initiative. Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter, and this is the show where I sit here in front of a shelf full of Pathfinder stuff and one D&D book and tell you of the many, many tales of me and my friends sitting around the tabletop playing the popular role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons. And though I seem to have run out of D&D stories, I'm branching into other games, so we should be able to keep going. Okay, so, topic of the day today, the Post Office of Doom. Now, I know that sounds really silly, but you're gonna love this. Once upon a time, about a month ago, one of my friends, his name is Daniel, made a new tabletop game system called Spite, like spiting somebody, Spite, in which it was a learn your skills by use sort of thing. So, you know, if you wanted your character to be really strong, they would have to do a lot of rolls or a lot of things in the game that required strength, and they would get experience points anytime they did. Or if you wanted your character to be really good at artwork, you know, anytime you had some downtime, you better have them doing artwork so they would get experience points and get better at artwork. And it would scale, the abilities would scale from like 1 to 5 or 1 to 6, kind of like OVA was, but it was you had to earn it rather than just starting out and you had it. So it allowed for character growth. And you would get X amount of points to start with to build your character, and you would also choose 5 weaknesses. And then once you were set up, you would, decide what kind of character you were, decide what your weaknesses were, and the character sheets were very, very simple. It's got the regular D&D stats, strength, dexterity, constitution, etc. And you would base all your skills into those, like physical power and bulk would be under strength, or dexterity would mean how fast you were, constitution would be your stamina, how endurant of a person you were in terms of pain, etc., etc. All the things you would come to expect, but say like you wanted a character who was good at ballroom dancing. Well, that's dexterity, so you would write it in under dexterity, and anytime you got experience points for doing things that involved dexterity, you could level up your ballroom dancing that way. So, and I know that's a weird example, but I just love to use that, because I had a character a long time ago that one of his skills was ballroom dancing, and he was damn good at it, too. So, anyway, the reason it's called Spite is because at the beginning of each session, every player gets what's called a Spite token, and we were using, I think, like poker chips or something, a physical representation, so nobody could cheat or use extra ones. A Spite token. And the way the game of Spite was set up was that nobody in particular was like the dungeon master or the narrator. Everybody was. And it would sort of go around the table, and I know that sounds weird and chaotic, and it is, but it's a brand new system, home built, so hear me out. Everybody was the DM, and we would kind of take turns arbitrating what would happen. So you would like go to a location, X, Y, and Z happens, and then your turn as a DM would end when you set down a challenge. Like say you had your players navigate down a street and go up to a building or a door or whatever, and the door is locked. And the thief-like character says, "I'm going to pick the lock." And he goes, okay, so he picks the lock, and your turn as a DM would end there. So anytime a skill check came around, it would shift over to the next person. And when a skill check came up, the other players would vote to see how difficult they think that should be on a scale of 1 to 6. I know it sounds arbitrary, and I know it sounds like, oh, you could just say everything was 1, but trust me, we didn't. And it would be, based on their skills, they would get X amount of dice to roll, and, you had to get at least 2 dice at or above the challenge rating that everybody set down. It's very community-based to make sure that there wasn't a DM, because it was kind of everybody was the DM, and if you were doing a skill check, it was you versus everybody. So you can decide what kind of mercy everybody has, or what kind of, bad karma is going to come your way if everybody at the table doesn't like you. Stuff like that. It encourages you to be nice to your party members, because they might just screw you over if you get a challenge and they all say, oh, that's a 6, go for it. Things like that. The spite tokens would be involved to make things worse. Like if you were in a battle, you could hand in a spite token and go, and then suddenly more orcs came. Or you could say, you try to pick the lock, but suddenly your thieves' tools break, and things like that. It would basically insert drama or a conflict into the story. And since everybody had one, and you could earn them by doing other things, we could build a story where interesting things happened or where bad things happened using these tokens just anytime we wanted. So there was really no planned story to it, because you couldn't plan anything, because the turn of being DM would go around the table, and as the party moved forward, spite tokens would get used, and things would twist and turn back and forth. And it sounds completely chaotic, and it kind of is. But it was really interesting to experiment with. This was basically a home-built game. It's learn stuff with use, and everybody's the DM, taking turns being the DM, and the players get to vote how difficult skill challenges are before you take them. It was a very community-based game, so you wouldn't want to play this game with your enemies. But Spite was actually very, very well put together. So, and we were beta testing it. I mean, it had never been played before. You can't find this anywhere. One of my friends built this, so it's not published anywhere. But I had to explain it because the story I'm about to tell wouldn't make any sense unless you knew that everybody was the DM and that everybody was using spite tokens and different things like this, because it puts a context in, because this story both makes sense and sounds like a complete fucking train wreck at the same time, but by the end of it, it had kind of amalgamated into something kind of beautiful. So I had to tell this story and tell you about Spite, if only because it was a rare experience to see a brand new game that one of my friends built that kind of came together at the end. So I wrote down kind of some of the stuff that happened so I would remember what to do, or what happened. So first of all, characters. My character here is a guy called Artie, and he's a magic painter. Anything he paints on a canvas or on a wall or on a surface can become real. And I know that sounds really fucking overpowered and stuff, but there's no magic system in Spite. It's just anything you want to do, anything you want to build, as long as you base it into one of your stats. You can, like I said, you can have a skill of ballroom dancing if you want. You can have a skill of gnome tossing. You can base that into strength. Whatever you want to do, anything, you just got to remember, whatever it is that you're doing, everybody else around the table gets to decide how hard it is for you to do that. So if you have an outrageous skill like leaping tall buildings in a single bound, everybody around the table is going to vote that as a 6, and it's going to be next to impossible. So The gimmick behind this character was a semi-famous artist who could make things real if he spent enough time painting them. And I actually had a pen. I actually like drew shit on different things like that. And I'll show you some of these as we're going through because they were kind of funny at the time. But who else did we have? We had a guy. We had basically an Aryan knight who was like pretty racist, and I was like, and I looked at the guy. I was like, "Why did you build a racist character?" He's like, "Well, I've never had a racist character." I was like, "That's a stupid reason," and he said, "Shut up." He's a really passive aggressive guy in real life. He wouldn't hurt a fly, but man, he comes up with some weird characters and acts out through them, I guess. We had another character who was shit. Who all did we have? It's hard to describe because it's not so much the characters that mattered; it's the story. But oh yeah, we had like a holy avenger kind of guy, a knight who had like a demon slaying sword. We had like a racist nobleman knight that carried like a long rapier. We had me, the magic artist. We had we also had a guy who had like metal for an arm, kind of like Full Metal Alchemist, but he could like control what it was, so he could make it into like a spiky ball hand or like a long chain or you know, a giant spoon. If he wanted a giant spoon, he could make his arm into a giant spoon, stuff like that. My spoon is too big, stuff like that. And we also had a character that it's very hard to describe, so I actually have to segue into this because we have one person amongst our group, and I won't name him, but he knows who he is, who is terrible at making new characters. Absolutely fucking terrible. Like, he'll start off with a concept, and then he'll want it to be something else, and then he'll want it to be something else. Like, he started out wanting to play like a ninja, but that ninja had to have elemental powers, but he also wanted to control time, and then he wanted to make a ninja with math. What did he say it was? Math jutsu, where he would like divide by 0 to split atoms and blow things up. And he wanted to make a naga as a character, and then he wanted to do like a cockatrice or a minotaur, and the minotaur was actually a nice guy, even though he was always in chains, so he would be in handcuffs the whole time. Or he thought about maybe being a harpy, and that harpy could speak in 17 languages, and he came up with these really fucking stupid, you know, but she also knew shadow magic, and then he came up with a mage that knew like math jutsu, but he was also a ninja, and he wanted to know how to make illusions, but the illusions were actually real. And I said that's creation magic, that's conjuration. But he didn't want to do that. He wanted it to be an illusion, but the illusion was real. And I was like, that's conjuration. That's creating something from nothing else. And I kid you not, while he was making his character, because this took me like 10 minutes after I figured out what I wanted to do, and I learned the spite system because it was a brand new game. It took me 10 minutes to make Artie the artist. Shut up, I didn't know what name to put down. Artie the artist. And it took this guy an hour and a half to like calm the fuck down and make a character, and he came up with what I think was quite possibly the most gloriously, I don't even have words for it, so while I'm thinking of them, I'll tell you what it was. It was basically he was the result of a magical experiment gone wrong. He was a man with scales like a snake and a scorpion tail. And he wore like a hood and gloves and stuff to keep his body covered because he was an abomination. And he had a severe craving for human flesh, but he was actually a really nice guy, and he tried to resist those urges all the time by eating other stuff. And he wasn't supposed to speak very often, but he actually spoke a lot during the game, and he had this long S lisp because he was a snake man, and he could spit poison at you out of this little pouch in his mouth, and fucking just... what do you call that? This stupid fucking... And I wish I could describe it better, because I was sitting at the table laughing so hard that there were tears going down my cheeks. Like, I hadn't laughed that hard in a long time, because we were used to playing D&D, Pathfinder, OVA, and the setting was in Absalom, so this is like Western Europe fantasy setting. So we've got a holy knight, a nobleman, an artist, a magic shapeshifter arm guy, and then Snake Man, who could jab you in the face with his fucking scorpion tail or spit at you, and he stood out like a sore fucking thumb, not only in this group but in the setting. It's like, you might take that guy into GURPS, or you might take him into like Call of Cthulhu or something freakish like that, but this guy had no business being in Absalom, much less anywhere in the inner sea. It's just like, I can understand if you want to make like a monstrous PC, because there's people that make minotaurs. There's people that play as orcs or kobold or goblins. I've seen people play really good goblins before and things like that, but poison spitting, scorpion tail, human eating snake man that he could crawl up walls too. He had Spider-Man powers. It's like, you see just this random clump of fuck that he just threw together after an hour and a half of considering, and it's just, I could not. I had tears going down my face, both of like pity, but I was laughing too hard. I couldn't stop laughing. And he was the younger brother of the guy that made the spite system, but he's like 17. That's the kind of thing you think up when you're 12. Oh, he's got a scorpion tail and he spits poison, and he's gonna eat human flesh, but he doesn't want to because he's a nice guy, and he has to wear a cloak to cover his face, and he's got Spider-Man powers, and you see a 6-year-old coming up with this, not a 17-year-old, and it's just, it's like, I didn't even want to sit near him, because this was just I'm waiting for like a level 20 paladin to come out of the woodwork and chop his fucking head off. It's just, damn. You really threw all of those ideas together. I mean, if you took one of those ideas, say he was in a magical, experiment gone wrong and he has a scorpion tail, fine. That's you could make something interesting out of that. Or say that he's got sticky hands and he can crawl up walls. Or say that, he was accidentally zapped with a viper and he can spit acid. But, he's still got to be a guy, a person who could walk through a bustling city and not get immediately spotlighted by everybody and their mother because he's just this freak of nature. But fine. If I was DMing, he would have been arrested and killed as a sin against nature, but I was only DMing 1/6 of the time, so I didn't get the opportunity. Okay, so 20 minutes in, we start the story. So, beforehand, the guy that made the spite system says, okay, we have to come up with a a common goal before we actually start, because there has to be an end game to the story that we're all going to tell. Otherwise, it just meanders in all directions. So we say, okay, I'm going to pick this guy sitting at the table, and he's going to decide what the end goal is. And it turns out to be the guy with the malleable Full Metal Alchemist arm. And he says, okay, my wife has been kidnapped and is being held in a mage tower somewhere in Absalom, and we have to go rescue her. We go, okay. Fairly basic, go rescue fair maiden from the clutches of evil, and it's a mage tower, and there's so many tropes in there. I had to shake my head, but really we were all there to test out spite, so it may as well have been something simple. So we start out, and Full Metal Alchemist arm guy wanders into the Tavern of Many Dark Corners. I got to start out DMing, so I figured I may as well start this on a light note. He wanders into the Tavern of Many Dark Corners. Why is it called that? Well, because the building is a very strange shape, because adventurers really like to put their backs up to walls and sit in corners and put their candles out so that they can watch everybody in the room and look all cool and mysterious. Well, everybody likes to do that, so the tavern keeper built a tavern to where there would be like 20 fucking dark corners so that everybody could go sit in a dark corner and watch everybody else, and there were like tables with chandeliers over them and stuff like that, so there would be like regular bar patrons and stuff. But you could have like 60 people sitting in different dark corners watching other people. If you see the building from the outside, and it looks like a complete Picasso mess, because it's built in such a way that it has all these dark corners for shady heroes to hide in. So Full Metal Alchemist guy wanders in and goes, I'm looking for a set of people from the Pathfinder Society to go on a mission. And everybody in the tavern goes, ho! And they put their hands up. Because as we all know, all adventures start in a tavern, right? So, of course, he just picks a random tavern. He's like, I need adventurers. Everybody turns, oh, me, pick me. I want to go on an adventure. Okay, so of course all of our other characters are in there, and Artie is by the hearth painting one of the busty barmaids, because that's just something funny I thought he would do. The knight and the Holy Avenger guy wander by, and the snake, scorpion, whatever the hell I am, man is sitting in one of the dark corners, and he volunteers to come. So he literally comes in and says, who wants to come? And he picks the 5 of us. So we figured it should all take place in Absalom, because it was an environment that we were familiar with. And we went to a place that's actually in here, the Pathfinder Society Field Guide. Hooray! There's actually a mage tower in Absalom. I think it's in Eastgate, which is not quite like the high end of town, but it's like the second highest, so I'm trying to find it in here. I know it's not very interesting to watch me leaf through a book, but those are resources. Let's see. Absalom, page 4. Oh, okay. Eastgate. Here it is. We picked an actual location so that we could build a background to it using one of the books. So let's see what it says. And this is where the post office of doom came from. So in Eastgate there is a mage's tower, and it's called the Blue Tower. It says, among the tallest buildings in all of Absalom, and easily the tallest in Eastgate, This tower of blue coral is topped with a lighthouse capable of illuminating the harbor. Because remember, Absalom sits on an island. Along with the immense spire of Nex on the northwest horizon, the blue tower is a landmark by which most natives of Absalom can easily gain their bearings as they journey from one end of the city to the other. The tower is home of the Winged Sandals, an order of dedicated messengers who worship Iomedae, which I guess is a god. I probably butchered that name. Iomedae, and deliver messages anywhere in the world. So yeah, it had like this brief paragraph of information that we use. Oh my god, I knocked his tail off. Hang on. Stop the show. Cyranox, no. Oh. Put his tail back on. Oh god, his wing. Shit. Drama, drama, drama here on D&D Stories. Always take care of your figs, boys and girls. That is not... You don't joke about shit like that. My girlfriend made that. I have to take very good care of it. Anyway, I forgot what I was saying. Oh, okay, so since we had already called it a mage tower, and that was one of the only towers in Absalom, and we were set to use Absalom as a setting, we decided that the Winged Sandals was actually a post office. Since they were full of messengers and it was a mage tower, we decided that the mages, because they could send messages all over the world, you know, the messengers, they had to be like mages or powerful wizards. So, you know, if you could send a crate from one end of the world to the other by magic, that would be pretty damn cool. So we decided, you know what, it's basically a glorified post office, isn't it? Like, yeah, you know, we've been playing D&D for a long time. We've never actually raided like a post office. It's not something that usually comes up. You know, you have bar fights in the taverns, or you clean undead out of a crypt, or you lay siege to a castle, or, you know, stuff like that. Or you explore ruins. You don't really go to the post office in D&D, or, you know, or Spite, or whatever you want to call it, in these settings. And it's like, that's something we've actually never done before. So we said, yeah, it's a post office. And, you know, why this guy's wife was kidnapped and then held hostage in a post office, I don't know, but shut up, it was funny at the time. Anyway, so that's where this list of things comes up, because we decided that there would only be one room on each floor. So we didn't have a map, we didn't have anything to mark our spots with. This was basically an RP style game, and if combat came up, it would be decided by dice. So there's really no reason to have a grid anywhere. So, and it's made of coral. A tower made of coral. That must be a weird looking place. Anyway, so we go up to the front door and we find that it's locked. Then there's this giant freaking padlock on it. I was like, how did that get there? And it's like, it's made of solid iron and it's bigger than we are. It's like, why did... It must be a mage that locks up such a place like this, because, you know, not even the strongest of men could move a padlock that big, much less break it. And so, you know, Artie sets his easel up and he's like, okay, I'll try and find us a way in. And so he starts like painting on his easel. And he makes this. If you've got me minimized, have a look. Blue Tower entrance. Key. But there was a guy like a couple stories up, leaning out of the window, and he saw us coming, and he says, hey, what business do you have here at the Winged Sandals Blue Tower? And we go, and he goes, you know, we're looking for my wife. Have you seen her? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes back inside the inside the tower and doesn't come back out again. So we're like, yeah, we gotta go in there. Or, so no, actually we convinced him to let us in. I know I'm confusing this story, but there's so much weird crap going on, I get it mixed up. We convinced him to let us in, but I don't think we ever saw him again. So that was, again, with 6 DMs, it got really weird really quick. So the padlock undoes itself by magic because we convinced the guy up there of our good intentions. That we were like, I guess we convinced him we were like an investigation group or something like that. And the giant padlock opens and we go in, and the first floor is completely empty. And remember, we're switching DMs, so every time we go to a different room, it's a different person talking, that being the narrator. And we go in, and the entire floor is tiles with a grid drawn on them. And I'm like, oh god, this is going to be a room full of traps, isn't it? It's not much of a post office at all. So, what was it? We go into this tile room, and immediately the floor gives away, and 2 of us drop down into the basement. And down there in the basement, they find that it was sealed off. It's actually a secret room. And, it's like, we're going in the exact opposite way we wanted to. And they go, oh god, it's so dark. And they light up their... I think they lit up like a shield or a helm with a spell or something like that. They didn't light a torch because they didn't know it was down there, but they were surrounded by like crates and straw and boxes and packages and things where they go, yeah, it is a post office. This must be the lost mail department. Oh yeah! And we kind of fist bump because we're trying to make the post office theme work. So we go, it's the lost mail department. And they try to stack crates and climb out, but it doesn't work. One of the crates is eaten away, and it's got like dormant scarabs inside, and they have to beat the scarabs off of themselves before they get eaten. And they try to take the stairs, but the stairs are like eaten away by time, and there's a cave system that goes down, and they get harassed by bats, and they have to beat the bats off themselves. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just up in the lobby like, man, this is the first room. And they finally like leap across some of the broken stairs, and they end up coming out of like one of the walls on the ground floor next to us. And they're like, man, that was weird. There used to be a department of lost mail down there, and there's still all that stuff down there. We should come back and loot that sometime. It's like, focus, guys, come on. We're supposed to be climbing the tower, not digging down into it. And so we go up into what basically amounts to a workroom. There's a bunch of... and I know this dungeon is not going to make any sense, but again, bear with me. It's 6 different DMs. We climb the stairs and we get up to what is basically a workroom full of desks. And we find a bunch of mages working on mail. And we go, have you seen your lobby? It fucking sucks down there. And one of them looks over at us and goes, well, we know how to walk across it because we're supposed to be here. What are you doing here? And as soon as we walk in, we're kind of examining what they're doing, and they're basically packaging things and like enchanting them. And then the enchanted packages vanish and go to wherever they're supposed to. So it is a post office. It's a functioning workplace. And as we're crossing the room, suddenly the entire tower vibrates. And we hear like this kind of sound. And there's an explosion at the top of the tower where the lighthouse is. And we see rocks and shards of glass and like bits of fire flying up. Apparently the top of the tower just exploded while we were inside. And then before we can do or say anything, these black portals start opening up all over the walls and the ceiling, and these giant fucking like dismembered hands like start crawling out like spiders and like grabbing dudes. And as soon as they grab onto like a mage's back, they like attach themselves and they become like these monstrous abominations. And then there's like tentacles coming out of the portals flailing everywhere, and like, "Oh no! I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going! Ah!" And Artie's hiding behind the holy knight trying not to get grabbed. And we go, okay, epic fight scene, and when we set it at like 6, because you know it's got to be really difficult if there's like Cthulhu monsters coming out and wall masters from Ocarina of Time running around. So we fight, and we found out like if we stab the hands instead of the abominations they're attached to, that like these Wallmaster hands will come off and die, and the wizards will return to normal. And we were fighting with the tentacles, and that was like the Holy Avengers time to shine, because he had a holy sword on him. So you know all of his skill checks were like 1s and 2s, because we knew that was what his character was built to do, was fight like dark evil things. So he was like slicing up tentacles and stabbing Wallmasters in the palm, and saving, you know, breaking down, you know, force fields that were made of dark magic, and they're flailing around, cutting black goos going everywhere. There's black blood splaying across the walls. And we're like, okay, all you mages, get the fuck out. Something bad is going down. And we send all of them out, and we're like, okay, I think that's all of them. I guess we keep going, and we're like splattered with black Cthulhu blood, and every time we killed one of the tentacles, the portal that it came from would like close up. We made sure that we had killed all the tentacles, so there weren't any like portals to the netherworld open anywhere that anybody could stumble across on accident. We made sure that they were all gone. Then we moved on up. You know, every time, you know, it's a tower, we have to go up the stairs every time we're done with a room. And we come up to an executive's office. And we found a few more mages there. We sent them out. You know, it's like, watch out for tentacles. And they go, what? And he goes, trust me. And it's like where the fancy, it's where the fancy offices are. And we looked for valuables, even though it was a post office. You know, there's not a lot of valuables to be found there. But they had fancy oak desks and quills from eagles and plush furniture and stuff like that. Not a lot went on there. And then we found basically a lift. Not really an elevator, but like you would use like the rope to lift yourself, but it was magical, you know, because it's all the mages are the post office guys. So if you stand on the symbol, then it'll go up, and if you stand on the other symbol, it'll go down. Stuff like that. So we stood on it, and then, you know, the whole party got onto this lift, and as we were going up, we noticed that there were spikes at the very top of the lift shaft, and we're like, oh crap, we have to get it to stop, or we have to get out of here before something bad happens. And it was moving pretty slowly, and I was like, okay, how do we get out of this? And so Artie pulls out his easel, and he starts like whipping around the big plots of paint, and he makes a pair of elevator doors. And I put a 4 on it, because we had already been to the tile room, the workroom, and the executive offices, so whatever was next would be the 4th floor, right? Well, the elevator hadn't reached the 4th floor. We were between floors, and since he made a full set of doors, he created an extra floor between the 3rd floor and the 4th floor for us to like jump out onto. And, you know, then the next DM took over, you know, because it keeps going around and around every time we do a skill check. And the DM that picked that up decided, you know what? That's where the vault is. And we go, the vault? What is that? And he goes, that's actually where the mages keep all their gold and, you know, postage, all their postage fees and stuff, because it's not cheap sending packages thousands of miles away by by magic. You know, it's really not cheap. So that they needed a secret place to keep all their riches. And, you know, it's high-level freaking magic and high-level components to send heavy objects for all these hundreds of leagues. So they charge people out the butt for this. And since a post office doesn't normally have very good security, they made like a space between spaces. So there's a floor between the 3rd floor and the 4th floor that acts as the vault for all their gold and riches to be stored. And we go, okay. So we're like in this chrome room that's got like a vault door, the inside of a vault door, and it's mounted with gold and gems and diamonds, and, you know, and none of us are really like people in need of money, you know, because, you know, a semi-famous artist, 2 chaste warriors, a snake man, and, you know, Full Metal Alchemist guy, none of us are gonna like start heaping gold into our bags because we don't really need it. So we're upstanding adventurers. But as soon as we try to get out, the security system kicks in. Now, of course, mages do not have a normal security system that just goes burn, burn, and calls the police. Instead, a chute kind of comes out of the wall and starts pouring lava into the room. And I'm like, you fucking idiot. We're in a big metal box, and you're pouring lava into the room. And he goes, yeah, I know. Spite token. So he just made it worse. He goes, okay, how are we going to get out of here? And he goes, as the lava is pouring in, it's gonna the floor starts opening up to deposit all the gold and gems into the floor below. That's where the executive offices are, as the lava starts trailing down. And I go, wouldn't that pour lava into the executive's offices as well? And he goes, yeah, along with us. Ah! So we drop into the executive's office, and I think one of them threw like an ice spell or something, and then more Cthulhu tentacles started popping out. You see how this is just a complete fucking funhouse full of shit that shouldn't be happening? So that's the kind of game this turned out to be. Is we got attacked by more abominations and more giant dismembered hands. We called them wall masters because that's the only thing we could relate them to. And, you know, more Cthulhu tentacles, but there was lava flowing into the room, so we could like shove them into the lava and do the, you know, of course we didn't die of fumes or heat exhaustion for standing within 10 feet of liquid rock, but, you know, whatever, it's Pathfinder. So we're desperately trying to fight all these creatures off while lava is slowly seeping across the floor and make it to the stairs, thank God. And we go up the stairs, and we reach, we go through the president's office, but there's nothing up there. And then we go up to, like, another spiraling staircase to reach the top, because the top of the blue tower is a lighthouse, and we saw the lighthouse explode, so it's like this giant platform covered with rubble now. And now there's this dude up there. Not the postmaster, by the way, though it would have been hilarious if it was. This dude in like a headdress shaking a stick, casting evil like Cthulhu monster spells, and he's got this little pea with him. Like this, like if you've ever seen a roly-poly or a pill bug, it was like that. He's like got this in one hand, and he's like shaking a stick over it and like casting black magic and stuff. And suddenly Full Metal Alchemist guy runs up and he goes, "That's my wife right there." And I go, "That little pill bug?" And he goes, "No, it's a prison. She's pressed into it like a Pokeball." I said, "That Pokeball is about the size of a pea. You could swallow that thing and not notice." And he goes, "Shut up." A lot of the arguments that game got solved with "shut up." So we kind of step forward to do battle with this guy, and you know, Artie sets out his easel and starts like painting furiously, because you know this is a high level magic user. It has to be. He made the lighthouse explode. He's summoning Cthulhu monsters. He's got this guy's wife like contained in a container the size of a pea. You know, it's high-end magic. So he starts painting. He, like, as soon as they get up there, he sets his easel up and he starts painting right away. And, you know, they counted my painting speed for whatever I could draw on paper, and it had to be something recognizable. So the first thing this guy does is whips around. He's like, "Ah, what are you doing here? I'm busy doing blah 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 for the dark god," or you know, the regular villain kind of rant. But shut up, it was fun at the time. And he goes, you know, and as with this sacrifice, he's holding up this tiny little pea that's got this guy's wife inside. And with this sacrifice, I will grow 10 times more powerful to please the dark god, blah blah blah. And he goes, "You will not interfere." And he's like thrusts his staff down to do like this fiery shockwave to throw us all off of the top of the tower. And remember, this is like one of 2 towers in Absalom that you can see no matter where you are in the city. So to fall off would mean you're dead. So just then, just as he was doing that, Artie finishes his painting, and it just happens to be a dome shield. I drew like half a Captain Planet symbol on the paper and called it a dome shield, and protected about half the party with it. And of course, you know, the Holy Avenger guy had like a shield, and he had dark magic resistance, and a couple of them bundled up with me under the shield. And, you know, they go forth to do battle with him, and he's slinging fireballs, and he's trying to hang on to this little pea the whole time. He's slinging fireballs, and they're like throwing debris at him. They're running up to cross swords with him, even though he's like some old guy with a magic staff. And he keeps like concentrating on the staff, and he calls out like a tentacle comes up out of the ground, and suddenly like reaches over and starts making grabs for people, but people are dodging. You know, we're throwing like really high skill checks because this is a boss battle, of course, so these are like 5s and 6s the whole time. And we're getting whipped around, and he's tossing fireworks back and forth trying to keep us away because, you know, once you get into melee range of a magic user, it's pretty much over. So he's throwing all the big fireworks while he's out there. And what happens next? Artie sets up his easel again, like to one side where hopefully the tentacle can't get him, and he starts like painting furiously, trying to like figure out. And I made like a really complex drawing, and I don't have it with me, unfortunately. I don't know what happened to it, but I made like this complex drawing while they were fighting, and I kept like passing my turn while they were doing stuff. And the tentacle is flailing around, and the Full Metal Alchemist guy is fighting the tentacle and trying not to get, you know, tossed off the building or hung by the neck or anything like that. And I finally finish it, and then when it comes around to my turn again, I flip it over, and it's a sarcophagus. And then suddenly into thin air bursts this stone container that kind of shoves him into a box and goes poof, and then falls flat. And, you know, a sarcophagus lid weighs like 1,200 pounds. So this old man is not going to get out of there. And he drops his staff, and he drops the pea at the same time. And they go in different directions. And there's instant pandemonium, because if this pea drops off the end of the tower, then it's all for naught, because they may never find that tiny little pea again. So Full Metal Alchemist guy like jumps off the side of the tower, and he makes his arm into a chain, and he's like reaching for it. Ah! And he has to roll like a bunch of 6s to grab it, and he does, because he's got enough points in his arm ability. So he makes like a spoon to catch it in, and then makes it into like a container to catch it. So his wife is safe. And then Artie gets grabbed by the tentacle, and I thought, oh God, no. You know, because I'm not the DM, so I don't get to decide what happens. And Artie gets grabbed up by this tentacle, and it winds around him like a constrictor, and then it waves him around. Ah, no, help me! And the guy with the Holy Avenger sword goes, I'll save you! Ah! And then Artie gets flung off the tower, and I go, oh shit, I'm gonna die. You know, Artie can't fly. He's basically me if I was magical. It's not going to go well when he hits the ground, and nobody among us has any flight abilities or any like telekinesis. It's like, oh man, I'm going to be the one casualty. And then I stop and I have a recollection. And I pick up the Pathfinder Society field guide, and I asked the guy who was playing the DM at the time. I go, "What direction did you throw me from the tower?" Because we pinpointed on the map exactly where the blue tower was, and I go, "In what direction did you throw me?" And he goes, "West." And I go, "Well, it looks like you just threw me into the Eastgate Pond." Woo! I'm not dead. So this poor artist guy gets flung off this tower. Goes, ah! His paint supplies are flying everywhere. His easel is tumbling end over end because it's like attached to him at the wrist. And he goes, ah! Splash! And paint goes everywhere. And there's like different like rainbow colored goo is flying different in like diluting out into the pond. And there's like me, I did like a 10,000 foot belly flop, and it's like half consciousness at that point. So they have to go collect me from the pond and call the local guard to pick up this 9,000 pound sarcophagus. And they have to decide what to do with the staff, because he was using the staff to summon all those Cthulhu monsters. And I don't remember what they did with it. I think they decided that he used up all the charges on it, or that he had. Oh, I remember now. It was a. They used it like a dragon orb. You had to hold it and then overpower the presence that was inside to make use of it. Otherwise, it would just take you over and do whatever it wanted. It was like an evil intelligence item. So when they grabbed it at first, it took over somebody's mind and he started summoning creatures, but then the guy with the Holy Avenger sword just ran up and broke it, because it was made of wood, so he put his sword through it and it snapped, and it was a stick, And of course they kept the stick as a souvenir, because hey, it used to be a dark artifact, but now it's broken, And that could be sequel bait, if somebody came and stole the pieces and put it back together, would it still work? Maybe. But they had to go get Artie out of the pond, and he was covered with freaking paint. He was all colors of the rainbow. And, of course, Full Metal Alchemist arm guy had his wife back, and he had to go to a cathedral to get this tiny magic prison taken off so she could be free. And, we called the episode done from then. It was like, yeah, we totally fucking destroyed that post office. I was like, how often do you get to say that? We totally destroyed that post office. And we rescued Fair Maiden from her tiny pea-sized prison, and, Artie became the granddaddy of all belly floppers. And just, you see how clown shoes and completely random this story is, because it was every 5 or 10 minutes we were passing the DM powers to a different person. So it was both stupid and chaotic, but at the same time completely glorious, because when you bring 6 different minds to the table to tell the story all at the same time, you come up with some really funny stuff. So maybe it's funny to you, maybe you had to be there at the time, but I had fun. I thought it was really great. So Artie ended up going back to the tavern as a slightly better, I guess, psychic artist, or whatever you want to call it. He really only actually painted pictures and like stood behind people, so he didn't get murdered. So all of his experience points went into his magic painting skill. So he didn't have a lot of character growth, but it was fun at the time. How often do you get to climb a mage tower that's also a post office that's also got Cthulhu tentacles running through it? So it's shit like that. You can't even make it up, Apparently you can. It just needs 5 other people. So that is the end of that particular D&D story. So I will see you guys next time. Keep gaming.